Hey, it's Mack with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Monday. It's January 26th. Believe it or not, the month of January is almost over. It's been an incredible month, to be honest with you. It's been a really good month, one of the best months we've had in a long time. There's been lots of movement, lots of volume, and today we didn't get quite as many entries as what we have been getting, but it was very predictable today. The price action followed the rules almost to as good as you could ask, almost really. Notice we have a trend moving up here, a little channel. We got a break, move to a new high. Then we have a channel coming down, a break, two legs to a new low, a channel coming up, a break, a move to a new high, a channel coming down, a break, a move to a new low, channel coming up, a break, move to a new high, a little channel working down. You got an overshoot, which tells you that you're probably going to get, your break, and then you get your break. It attempted to make a new low. It didn't quite make it, but there's a little trap there. This was a nice long setup. Um, and there's actually another one right next to it that I did not circle for some reason. Really, I like that one better. There's actually a green one right there, but we'll talk about all that. But you definitely want to take that one right here. We're looking for prices to make a new long, and you got the move lower, failed second entry short, all that good stuff. So, but anyway, channel moving up, a break here, move to a new high, a channel moving down, a break, move to, so it was just perfect price action. Look at the bigger channel. Um, I drew these first two swings here, and then you actually had a little something going on right here. It looked like it could be a spike in a channel. So I drew this line actually originally first and drew it down. So I was hoping prices would bounce here. And when you drug it up, it fit up there and it looked like it was a perfect match. And it did turn out to be a perfect match because we got our bounce right here. But you didn't really have any trend line in place until this came in. So it didn't really get confirmed till here. But when it turned down, when it bounced right here and then turned down again right here, I was pretty confident this was a clear two-tiered channel. And somebody else actually sent me theirs. His price action looked a little different. And I'm curious how his chart might have worked out, but I think he drew his like this right here. And it looked pretty good on his chart, but it just doesn't look the same on my chart. I think he drew it across here, maybe something like that. And then he had a midline in here. So you see it fits, it's close, but notice how he didn't touch the midline right here. He didn't, this is what I think caught his eye, these bounces here. But he didn't get to the midline, and then of course his line didn't hold here. Didn't get back to the midline. There's just a lot of different reasons and maybe on his chart it did work out okay, but for whatever reason it doesn't fit my price action. I'd be curious to see because it looked really good on the chart he sent me. So if that person that sent me that chart, if you'd send me yours at the end of the day, if you still have it up, I'd just be curious to see how yours ended up. Because that was, it looked interesting on your chart, but it just didn't look the same on mine. So something to think about. But I want to share one other thing with you since this gentleman just sent me this, and he said here's a tip to give people, and I like this tip, and I usually tell people this, but a lot of times this has to do with the 8:30 open, and what he's saying is that if he waits 10 minutes, that it becomes clear, and I think he's right. And just as an example, 8:30 was somewhere during this move down right here. It was right here. But you already had that trend line, and look what happens. Even at the open, price action still works. Um, but he's saying the tip for him is that if he waits till about 10 minutes after the open and lets the market settle down, and most days may not be this clear, but you were looking for a reversal, and if you draw that trend line off those first few swings right there, and you drag it down, it's fitting across the bottom, as you can see right there, and then prices bounce up and turn right down. I like that trade right there. I gave it a green circle just because it's a first entry and there is a little overlap and some different stuff. But if you trust the price action and you think you got it right, there's no reason not to go short right there. And that one's a first entry too, but it is a little two swings back, and it's the first break, and you're looking for prices to come back and test this. I really thought there was a chance that we might end up, it looked like a possible two-tiered range. I really thought there was a chance we might even go all the way down. But when you get a break that early, it's going to take a lot of big, one or two big moves to get down here by the time it reverses in most cases. So just some interesting things to think about. But this guy is a pretty good trader. I see his results. He shares them with me. And so I trust what he says. And I usually he'll share some stuff with me that I don't share because it may be a little bit different or from what I'm trying to teach, but most of his stuff is really, really good. He's doing really well. He knows who I'm talking about. He'll watch the video, and but I see he shows me his results each day. He's doing really well, and so if it's helpful to him, it's possible that it's helpful to other newer traders. So I try to share what I can, and anytime you've got something that seems to be working, if you want to share it, I will. And if it doesn't get too far outside the realm of what we're teaching, I'll share it with you. And I used to suggest not to actually trade right at the open, but I've changed my mind. As you get better, I would still stick to that thought process for newer traders because they're gonna trick you at the open. It never fails. They usually try to bounce it one way. Wasn't real tricky today. We were trading down and it just kept on trading straight on down. So it wasn't that tricky today, but some days it gets really tricky at the open. But the price action usually is never wrong. And so if the price action says you need to be going short, then if you get a good setup, there's no reason you shouldn't go short because that's some of the best moves. I mean, that was a quick, easy trade, and you would have had runners out of that. So imagine getting that runner and riding that all the way down. You got a great trade with a runner right out of the gate, and you're 1/3 or maybe halfway to your target, depending on how much what your target is every day. Um, so just something to think about. But anyway, let's talk about the trades I saw. The first two I made them green. This one's real iffy. I really wanted to make this one blue, but the concerns I had with this trade right here, it's a great setup. Notice you got really a triple bottom there, but I'm treating this like a double bottom, and a double bottom you can count this as a new low. So that's a pullback, first entry pullback. It's a failed second entry short right there, and look how bearish that bar is. I know that probably tricked a lot of people. And it was tempting to go short, and that's why I always say wait on the second entry counting off the high in most cases, because that's what they'll do to you. They'll trick you and they'll run it up. You want to know that the move up is over, and until you know that, you got to be careful going short. Obviously, we got a break here, and you got two legs up to a new high. There's another reason I was looking for possibly a measured move, and you could have used this in either place. That's probably the first move right there, and you move that up, and you see we came up way short of that. But I believe the reason is notice this gap. I hadn't even talked about that. We're 10 minutes in this video. I haven't even talked about the first trade hardly. Some good stuff though, good learning opportunities. This is a gap here. And most of the time, when you see a gap like that on the open, prices are going to fill that the same day. And if they don't fill it the same day, they're going to fill it pretty quickly within a couple of days. When it doesn't, that's not a good sign. There's an old rule that says 3 minutes, 3 hours, 3 days, or 3 weeks, or 3 months, something of that nature. I don't know if that's accurate. I've never gone out and really looked at it. But what I would say, and I would agree with, is that most gaps are filled rather quickly. The traders don't like gaps. The charts don't like gaps, and they like to fill them. And when I say gap, look where it closed. This line right here is the day. This is where prices closed the previous day, and this is where they opened at 5:30 on Sunday or whatever time it opens now. I forget when the time changes. I'm not trading or watching it anymore, so I could care less what time it opens. But sometime or another, that's where it opens. So there's a big gap there, and they drove it a little lower, and it comes right back, and right before they open, it's already filled that gap. And so that's rather common. It doesn't always, nothing's ever written in stone when it comes to trading in the markets, but that's pretty generally what happens. And so we filled the gap. So that was a little bit unnerving there, and that's one reason I left it green, because we filled that gap to the tick, and it tried to sell off. But when it reversed and went back up, it's hard to ignore that because it's somewhat of a trap. Um, so I at least want to mark that one green, um, because I like the trade. And so it moves up, and now you've had your break. You've had two legs up. There's one leg there, pull back in a second leg, and it's selling off. And you got a clear trend line off those first few swings. If you drag it down, it fits real well off those little bounces right there. And it hits the line. You get a little tick higher, and it turns down. And even though that looks like, let me back out some now that we're talking about the trades. You've seen the day. But even though that looks like a doji, it almost closed on its low. It's right off the trend line. I liked it for a possible short. And, it's a first entry, but there's some reasons to take that short. We're working down. It's in that channel. It's right at the open. They probably tricking people in the other direction. And then it's a nice leg down. And then even though this went a little bit lower, this is still like two legs back. And look at that big bearish bar. You might have thought about using a limit order here, and you probably would have gotten filled, I think, at least a tick back into that bar. I don't think you would have gotten filled on two ticks. You might have gotten two ticks. I can't remember exactly if it was just one or two ticks back into it, but you could have gotten filled on that, a better price than the stop. And it's not a real good, it's a really bearish bar, but it didn't quite close on this low. And that's when I usually like to sneak in with a little better price if I'm going to take that trade. And it was right off. And look, notice we traded through the midline, and you almost always come back to test that stuff. Comes back to test it, and then it turns down again. So I like that trade. And the only reason I didn't like this one was, even though it's and you could really treat this, I'm sorry, let me back up to this. You could really treat this almost like a failed second entry, but it's the first break of the trend line, so you know you're going to test this low too. And that's why another reason I like the limit order, because you don't necessarily have enough room to scalp out if you go short there with a stop. If it bounces right here. Notice it did try to bounce there before it went on and got down to these lows here, which is where you figure prices were going to at least test this low right here, or maybe even this one. And you see it even went a little lower than that. It retested the open, is what it did. And so, but I didn't like this one. This is like a little breakout pullback short, but you still had a lot of support there. And that one's really bearish, but sometimes just like that one, they'll trick you. So I think you just had to skip that one. And it's not really, even though there is a second entry off that low and it was right off the trend line, I thought you needed to wait on a second entry here, because that's just congestion. And I really thought it would back up and give you that little trap in a second, a failed second entry short, but it didn't. So, and I missed that trade, but that's what you got to condition yourself to do, to sometimes watch trades go without you and not let it shake you up. But then it gets the second entry short here that fails and turns and goes right back up, so you get a chance to enter there. And if you didn't like that one, when it pulled back here, I really liked that trade, because that's a second entry long, counting off the highs basically. It did go one tick higher, but it's close enough. It looks like a two. It's really almost like this pattern, just in reverse. It's close enough. It looks like a second entry. It acts like a second entry, and it traps people to the short side, and look at it go. Because most people didn't see this two-tiered channel, and they don't understand what's going on. Nice move up, and then you get a two-swing correction back, a second entry long right there. It's the first break of this short-term channel, so you know we're going to test that high, or try to. And you got to figure, if you got the channel right, that we're going to this midline. And so That I really thought we'd take off from there, but we didn't. It pulls back and it gives you another chance to get in on a second entry here. Big bullish bar. You really could have gone long right above that um, red bar, but that's, sometimes you want to wait on the better bar and see if you can get a little better entry. But then it ticks back again and gives you another entry right there, um, and you get another chance to go long. And it even bounced off the line again here. And this one was a little harder to find if you're not real, if you don't have a lot of experience. But sometimes you'll see that you'll get a break real early, but the trend is still really off the first couple of bars, and you can kind of see that working up through there. And it fits on the upper side too. And it was really tempting to go long right here, but I think that one's, and there is room to get out before here, but I just think it's a little bit risky. I think you're better off to wait. And you see once it tested that high a second time, and this line probably will extend it just so it's easier to see. But you get that little trap, pulls back, first entry, pull back, second entry, and it fails instantly right off that high. And look at that big bearish bar. The only reason that I didn't mark that one was because there's a lot of overlap right there, and sometimes you get that next little push higher up through there because you don't know if you can treat that as a break or not. And so I was afraid we'd go higher. We didn't. It just kept working down. But you really don't want to take shorts when you've got a big move up. And I didn't put this on here either. But this is your first leg up, and this is your correction. So you're looking for a measured move like that right there. And you can see we just about got it by the close. We didn't quite get there. We ran out of time. But, you got to keep that in mind the rest of the day. And so that was another reason I just wasn't sure that we'd come back to this line. But once we started working down, you might have thought about entering in here. But I think with the trend up and no break of this, I just think you could skip those shorts because you see, that thing could have bounced any time and gone higher and headed for this line. And that's what I thought might happen. So I didn't mark any shorts in there. And that's why just, you've already had some really good moves. You've already got money in your pocket. Don't risk it on one of these like trades that are kind of, look how flat the EMA is getting there. Just be patient and see if it comes back down to your trend line and bounces there. And notice you got your break, a couple of legs down, a little trap right there. On top of that, notice that double bottom, those matching lows. It breaks lower, turns up. I would have liked it better if it would have went straight out on the same move, but I still like that bar. But this is one, let it break higher and drop you a limit order right at the top, maybe a tick back in. You might even got filled 2 ticks back in, but a lot of times you'll miss these trades jacking around trying to get a better entry. So when it's coming off a major support resistance that's holding, a lot of times I don't fool around. I'll just use a stop and go with it and let it just watch. If it backs up a little bit, so be it. As long as it doesn't go below that bar, I'm staying with it. And there it goes. And there's really a second entry long right there that you might have even considered entering. So I've circled that one bigger, but let's just do this. I'm going to make that next one. Really want to make that one green. It's borderline being just a good second entry, but I'm going to make it green. I would have liked to. I really thought maybe we'd tick back here and get another shot, but by here you're so close into that resistance right there, and you really get a two-legged pullback that tests it. But I just don't think it's worth risking. You had your break here. You've already had the strong resistance across there. There's a good chance this thing goes a tick or two and then turns down. It ends up being good for a scalp, but I just don't think you could risk it there. And then it's pulling back. And then notice this new low. Again, there's a second entry long right there. It was really tempting to enter right there, just like I did right here. And, really, I really should have that green. It's just, it's basically a repeat pattern as well, except it's even a better setup. The only thing is you had the break, so you should really wait on your second entry on that one. and you get it right there. But by that time, there's a lot of overlap, a couple of dojis in there. Just wait and let's see what happens. Because sometimes on that break, it may give you another measured leg like that. So you got to wait, and then guess what? It ticks lower, traps everybody and turns and goes right out the other side. Just have a stop waiting right there in case it does fail. And if it does, it's a trap. Look at it go. Then it pulls back, and it gives you another chance to enter right there. I didn't like that one because it's right back into that resistance again. So I didn't like that one, but when it went higher and pulled back and tested it to the tick and then went higher, and it went lower first and then went out the top, I'd go long right there. Because the odds are this thing's it's going to get that new high now that it's had the break, and a lot of times it's going to be two legs up to a new high. And then there was one, then of course, we got the break outside right there, right after that bar, and it shoots on up, and then it's working down, clear channel working down, two leg correction, and then look at that big bearish bar. Now you've had your break here, a new high, you got one moving down. The odds are, and this is like notice that it goes up, it turns back, and then it goes up. That's clear two legs up, and if you went to a little smaller chart, you'd see a clear second entry there. It doesn't really look like a second entry the way it's set up here, but look how bearish that is. I like going short right below that bar. I really like going short below the green one, but even if you waited to here, just drop a limit order maybe right where your stop would go and see if it'll come back, and it did. And then you get a little two-leg. This is into the 2 o'clock hour. I didn't mark anything else. And we ended up getting a little trap here, and next thing you know, we're going higher again. So really good trading day. Like I said, not as many entries as we've had in the past, but it was as far as following the price action rules, I mean, everything was perfect and to the T today, and it really was an easy day. That's my opinion. For somebody that's been doing this a while, it was an easy day. If you're new to this and it didn't seem easy, don't get discouraged. But this is very easy to see that the EMA really from 9 o'clock on, so within 30 minutes of the market open, the EMA is pointing up all day long. And there's a clear trend line there, and every time we came back to it, we got a bounce. Even here, and this is what I was afraid might happen here. So that's the reason I was a little hesitant to go long on the second entry, because this is what sometimes happens. They'll trap you and run it down, and then trap a bunch of shorts in and reverse it. So sometimes it's just a calculated risk, and you go with what you see. But that's the reason I wanted to wait on the trap there. And it looks like it would have paid off to do the same thing here, wait on the trap, and one more push that fails, and then you could have ridden that on up. And there's a failed second entry short there, and that's when it really caught wind. But it's so late in the day, you don't want to be taking those trades. But it's just a good example of showing you that. So, but that's what I saw today. It's been a really good trading month. We're off to a good start this week. Let's just hope it continues. But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it again tomorrow. But this is Mack with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.